Have you ever noticed how some of the most intelligent people you know seem to prefer being alone? Why have so many brilliant minds throughout history chosen isolation over social life? Could there be something in intelligence itself that pushes people away from common social interaction? Arthur Schopenhauer had a fascinating explanation for this. And no, it's not just about introversion or shyness. According to him, intelligent people don't avoid social life by chance. They do it because they see something most people don't. In this video, you'll understand why deep thinking leads to isolation, how solitude can be both a blessing and a curse, and what great thinkers like Nietzsche, Tesla, and Einstein have in common when it comes to avoiding people. If you've ever felt out of place in social groups or prefer your own company, this video will make a lot of sense. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and let's dive into Schopenhauer's ideas about intelligence and social isolation. For Schopenhauer, solitude wasn't a deliberate choice. It was a natural consequence of intellectual superiority. The more intelligent you are, the harder it becomes to find someone who truly understands you. Most people live worried about things that, to a deep mind, seem empty. Status, gossip, petty disputes, and when you try to share ideas that go beyond that, you're met with confused looks or indifference. Schopenhauer said that a man can only be himself when he is alone, because only in solitude is he truly free, free from social expectations, free from the need to explain himself constantly, free to think without interruptions. This isn't about arrogance, it's about intellectual compatibility. Think of someone like Isaac Newton. He spent days locked in his laboratory, avoiding trivial conversations, or Emily Dickinson, who lived practically reclusive, dedicating herself only to writing. These people didn't hate humanity, they just needed mental space to create. For Schopenhauer, this was inevitable. Genius requires isolation because the common world doesn't offer the stimulus that an elevated mind needs. Schopenhauer didn't have an optimistic view of social life. To him, society was a grand theater of appearances. People don't truly connect. They play roles, wear masks, pretend interest. Everything revolves around status, validation, and recognition. And that, according to him, is exhausting for those seeking authenticity. Sociability for most is nothing but a mask that hides their banality. He saw social interactions as superficial, empty conversations about the weather, gossip, material achievements. And for someone who thinks deeply about existence, these conversations aren't just uninteresting. They drain energy. Nietzsche, another great thinker, said something similar. Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. He criticized how people prefer to cling to social illusions rather than seek uncomfortable truths. Social life becomes, then, an environment where deep thought is suffocated, where the individual must conform to the trivial, and for those who value ideas, contemplation, and reflection, this is unbearable. Schopenhauer believed most people lived enslaved to the will, a blind impulse that keeps them trapped in endless desires. Seeking social approval was just another manifestation of this irrational will, and the thinker, upon realizing this, feels a natural distance. Because he doesn't want to be part of this spectacle. There's a price to pay for seeing beyond the obvious, and that price is alienation. Schopenhauer recognized that intelligent people frequently feel displaced, as if they don't belong anywhere. Mediocrity generally only recognizes itself, while genius sees this mediocrity but finds itself alone. This feeling of not belonging isn't new. Great thinkers throughout history have reported the same sensation. Nikola Tesla avoided social events because he thought they hindered his work. He preferred the company of his inventions. Friedrich Nietzsche spent long periods isolated in the mountains, writing alone. Albert Einstein openly admitted he preferred solitude to the company of people who didn't share his interests. But this alienation doesn't come only from the genius himself. Often it's society that rejects him. Different people cause discomfort. Innovative thinking threatens the status quo. Nietzsche called this resentment of mediocrity, the tendency to attack what one doesn't understand. The genius doesn't distance himself just by his own will. He's also pushed away by the hostility of the world around him. And this creates a cycle. The more he isolates himself, the stranger he seems. The stranger he seems, the more he's rejected. This cycle can lead to depression, melancholy, contempt for the outside world. Schopenhauer knew this, and warned that isolation, though liberating, could also be a heavy burden on the soul. Why is it so hard for intelligent people to connect with the majority? Schopenhauer had a brutal answer: because the majority lives trapped in superficial interests and has no inclination for deep thought. While the thinker seeks to unravel the mysteries of existence, the majority seeks entertainment and immediate pleasure. This difference in interests creates an insurmountable abyss. Imagine trying to explain a complex idea and being met with "whatever" or "I don't get any of this." Frustrating, isn't it? For the genius, this isn't the exception, it's the rule. Schopenhauer despised socializing with common people because he believed mediocrity suffocated genius. Voltaire said something that sums this up well. The secret to boring people is to tell them everything you know. The problem isn't just the difficulty of communication, it's the difference in priorities. While the thinker wants to discuss philosophy, science, art, the majority wants to talk about celebrities, sports, trivialities. And there's nothing wrong with these subjects. But for those seeking depth, they're not enough. This incompatibility makes social life a burden. Because you need to simplify your thoughts, hide your true passions, pretend interest. And that's exhausting. Tesla avoided social interactions because he saw them as a waste of time. Newton was impatient with trivial conversations, not out of superiority but out of incompatibility. And this incompatibility isn't anyone's fault. It's just the reality of living on different intellectual levels. So is solitude a curse or a blessing? For Schopenhauer, the answer depended on perspective. He saw isolation as an inevitable destiny, but also as an opportunity for growth. The common man cannot bear solitude because he feels well only in the company of others. The elevated man seeks solitude because in it he finds himself. Solitude offers the thinker something that social life cannot provide: mental freedom, without distractions, without interruptions, without the need to adjust to others' expectations. It's in this silent space that creativity flourishes, that ideas take shape, that understanding deepens. Emily Dickinson wrote her deepest poems in isolation. Kant had a meticulous routine and avoided social events. Beethoven, amid growing deafness, found in solitude the strength to create some of the most powerful symphonies in history. But there's a dark side. Human beings are by nature social animals. The search for belonging is in our biology, and prolonged solitude can generate anguish, melancholy, a feeling of existential emptiness. Even the greatest thinkers suffered from this. Nietzsche, despite valuing isolation, admitted it was painful. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he describes the philosopher as a hermit who descends from the mountain to share his wisdom but finds rejection. This is the dilemma. Solitude brings intellectual freedom, but also imposes a burden that's difficult to carry. Schopenhauer recognized this duality and believed the secret lay in accepting solitude, but without being consumed by it. If social life is superficial and total isolation is painful, what's the solution? Schopenhauer proposed something he called philosophical detachment. The idea was simple. Don't fight the world, but observe it with serene distance, like a scientist before an experiment, with curiosity but without emotional involvement. This means accepting the banality of social life without getting irritated, understanding the intellectual limitations of the majority without getting frustrated, and above all, maintaining your own mental independence without seeking external validation. This approach is very reminiscent of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations wrote, "Give yourself the gift of being indifferent to what is outside your control. The world will always be full of distractions and empty conversations, but it's up to the individual to decide how much of this deserves their attention." The thinker doesn't need to isolate himself completely. He just needs to interact strategically, absorb what's useful, discard what's irrelevant. Schopenhauer knew that even great thinkers needed a minimum of human contact, whether to exchange ideas or to avoid absolute solitude. The secret was to choose carefully with whom to connect and keep interactions to the necessary minimum. Today, in a world full of digital distractions, fake news, and superficial relationships, this philosophy makes even more sense. Knowing how to filter information and interactions has become essential. Intelligence isn't just understanding the world, it's also knowing how to navigate through it without getting lost. In the end, solitude can be a burden, but it's also a privilege. Schopenhauer teaches us that instead of lamenting the lack of connection with the majority, we should see it as a mark of our intellectual freedom. Because solitude offers something rare, the opportunity to explore our own thoughts without interference. It's in it that we find authenticity. It's in it that we develop our deepest ideas, and above all, it's in it that we preserve our autonomy. Because when you don't depend on others' approval, you are truly free. Free to think what you want, free to question what others accept, free to be yourself. And this freedom, though lonely, is infinitely more valuable than the false connection offered by social superficiality. Schopenhauer believed that great thinkers should accept solitude as a gift, because only in silence, away from mediocrity, could they achieve their greatest accomplishments. And perhaps this is the true reason why intelligent people choose social isolation, not because they hate people, but because they love their ideas more than conventions. If you've made it this far, you've probably already realized something important. The relationship between intelligence and isolation isn't accidental. It's a natural consequence of deep thinking. Schopenhauer showed us that great minds find more comfort in solitude than in the company of the crowd, not out of arrogance, but because the superficiality of social life is exhausting for those who see beyond appearances. Solitude is both a burden and a privilege. It brings intellectual freedom, but can also generate suffering and alienation. And the solution isn't to flee from the world, it's to learn to navigate through it with philosophical detachment. Maintain your mental independence, choose your connections carefully, and value your own company. Because in the end, the question that remains is this: do you prefer to adapt to the superficial world or preserve your intellectual freedom? Schopenhauer chose the second option and left a legacy that echoes to this day. Now it's your turn to decide. If this video made sense to you, leave your like. Share it with someone who also prefers solitude, and subscribe to the channel for more reflections like this. See you in the next video.